I'm very glad to be on the couch with Elaine Constantine. She has a show currently at the Foundation. So Elaine, let's go back right to your childhood. Tell us a bit about what life was like when you were growing up.
So I come from Bury, and I was the youngest of a large Irish Catholic family. My parents were older when I was born. So like I've just explained, my eldest sister was 11 years older than me. And my parents had been part of a generation from the war. So they'd been very, very keen on getting pictures of themselves throughout that period. So when they met, they took lots of pictures of each other on, whatever cameras they could get their hands on. And that seemed to be a bit of a thing for working class people, to get dressed up, walk around the town and have pictures taken. And also my dad was into weight training, so he used to take pictures of himself standing like Charles Atlas. So when I grew up, and I came into the house, there was already tons and tons of old snapshots everywhere. And I think they only actually took 2 pictures of me when I was a kid, because I was, the last of a big family, and it was like, oh, we've done so many baby pictures. But I did grow up in this house where there was a lot of amateur photography. There was a lot of photo albums, and my dad used to love his cine camera. So he took his cine camera sometimes to the airport to see planes taking off. All that kind of amateur stuff that people do.
And did you want to take the camera from him and start shooting yourself?
No, I never did. But I used to absolutely beg him on a Sunday evening to get the cine projector out and watch the films.
So when did you first get exposed to what the kind of photography, if you like, that you do now?
Oh, that came much further down the line. I left school with no prospects, and I didn't have an education per se, because I was pretty average in my school. We were a massive school in Bury. Everyone had failed their 11 plus, and I wasn't good at anything. I was quite good at drawing. So even going to a college was kind of like a weird prospect in my particular circumstances. And so somehow the thing that I probably would have done, which was gone into a very basic job, a basic physical job of some description, didn't happen, because I was one of the 3 million unemployed when I left school. And I just became obsessed with scooters, because I didn't have a thing to do or a thing to look forward to. So we were like there's 5 kids, and everyone came before me was quite determined at doing something. And so I became obsessed with scooters. I was a mod.
So you became a mod, yeah.
I was a mod, and I needed to get a Vespa 50, because that's the first one you could drive. I had some part-time jobs. I got a second-hand Vespa 50, despite my parents saying I couldn't. I just got it. And then I became obsessed with spraying this scooter, different colours, getting custom stuff onto it, customising the engine. And then I graduated to a Lambretta, which was a higher CC. When I was 17, I had a GP 150, which is a Lambretta. And with the Lambrettas, you could remove all the leg shields, side panels. You could strip it down and you could spray it from scratch, and then you could build it back up again. So I had a boyfriend at the time who had a spray gun, and he taught me how to spray it and strip it down. So then I sprayed my own and stripped it all down, and I learned some custom spraying skills. And so this is where the camera comes in, yeah? Because I needed to take pictures of it. So I would take pictures of this scooter with the most horrendous camera, probably a camera from Boots, that you open and you go click, and the negatives are about that big, and it'd always come out of focus. So anyway, but I still continued to do snaps of scooters, and I'd go on scooter rallies and we'd take pictures of other scooters, all the custom shows, and I'd come back and I'd respray my scooter. And then during the time I was unemployed, like I was unemployed for 3 years in total, my mum said, they've got a dark room at the Arts and Crafts Centre where I go, because my mum's retired by this point. And I was like, oh, right, okay. And she's telling me that they loan cameras for the day. So I ended up going into this environment where you could go in and have a photography workshop where it was like open, access. And it was all old men who'd retired, or some sort of late middle-aged guys who'd been made redundant. There wasn't any women. And, you could hire a camera off them for the day, go out, snap some stuff and come in. They'd show you how to, it was just sit next to him, he'll tell you how to process the film, all that sort of stuff. So that's how I got into it. And then there was one tutor who was kind of doing a year there between teaching on 2 degree courses. And he said to me, have you seen the work of Chris Killip? And I said, no. So it must have just been published, the In Flagrante book.
Yeah.
And he showed me this book and I just couldn't believe it. I was just blown away by the pictures, because some of the pictures looked a bit like some of the people I hung around with. And I couldn't see that we were art subjects. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I just obsessed over this Chris Killip book. And then this guy said to me, same guy, he said, why don't you try and do City and Guilds in South Manchester? They've got a course where you can go, you sign on, you do 3 days a week, and you get a certificate to be a technician. So the next year I went and signed on in South Manchester Community College, and I was taught properly how to use a camera.
You had teachers there that you could really, basically...
Yeah, they were really good. They had a technician there, and they had 3 or 4 teachers coming in and out, and they were fantastic. And there was about, 25 people on my course from all over Manchester. So I got a job on a community scheme at Manchester Museum, assisting a museum photographer. That lasted a year because that was a government scheme. And then I got promoted to supervisor and got a real job, which didn't really happen on those schemes, but it did, because I was very, very diligent, worked really hard. And they were like, we want to keep you on, but the only way we can do it is make you into supervisor. So I was suddenly a government scheme person to a proper job. And then I saw an advert in the Manchester Evening News to be a technician at Salford Tech. Mm-hmm. So I went for the interview there, I got that job. And then whilst I was doing that job, I was actually running the photography department as a technician and demonstrating. So I was lecturing and doing that. So it was a bit of a con, but for me, it was like a big step up. And I would be about, 23, 24, and I met the fashion lecturer who, there was lots of design courses going on in this college in Salford. One of them was fashion design, and the fashion lecturer approached me and went, I think we'd do some good pictures together. And I didn't know what he was talking about. And he went, I'm a stylist. And I didn't know what a stylist was. So he's like, I get models and I dress them. Oh, okay, yeah, let's do it then. So we started doing little shoots here and there at the weekends. And then within about a year or two, we were just working non-stop. As soon as the college was over, 4:30, we were up with the backdrops and cameras and tripods, and some of the students would come and model. So yeah, it kind of started.
It was all studio based then, though.
No, we'd go out, we'd do whatever the student who designed the outfit wanted to photograph, we'd do it. So they were the client kind of thing. Right. One of the other lecturers in the college was married to a guy who taught photography at Manchester University, and he apparently had taught Nick Knight at Bournemouth. So I met with him, and he gave me some advice, and he said, get to London, don't hang around here, it's a dead-end job, and get yourself a job assisting a photographer. So I'm 25 now, going on 26. And I'm a bit late to be jumping into that, but for that period anyway. Then I get contacted by him a few weeks later, and he said, Nick Knight's looking for an assistant, why don't you go and interview? So I interviewed, came down to London, and he said, yeah, I'll take you on. So I started working for Nick Knight, and then I worked with him for around a year, and then literally straight after that I went in the face, and they started giving me small pictures to start with, small portraits. But just to kind of put that into context, what the Face magazine was, it was the kind of thing that globally anybody who was interested in music, photography, as in fashion or documentary, if they wanted to springboard, that would be the place, because it had the best art directors, had the best fashion designers. It was a hub of, youth culture and design.
Yeah.
And so I'd always looked at the Face, even from before, like I started working at Salford Tech. I'd looked on the Face as like this kind of style Bible and thought, I'll never be able to get in this magazine.
And you developed this sort of style where you sort of you put fashion and documentary together. How did that evolve? What made you think that this is one way forward?
Well, I remember when I was working with Ian, and he was styling the fashion lecturer, and being bored by models striking poses and thinking, I don't like this. It doesn't feel very interesting. I don't know why I had that thought, because I wasn't someone in that time where I was looking to be a world level creative. Do you know what I mean? I was just like, this feels a bit naff. It feels, these girls sort of doing this kind of, and I wasn't that kind of girl. I was tomboy through and through. So I felt like photographing women, they had to reflect something more than just advertising their figure and alluring poses, I guess. Feminist without even knowing it. And I guess being obsessed with the Chris Killick book, and others came after it as well, I somehow merged those in without even thinking it through in some ways. I mean, going back to when I first got to London as well, I discovered this bookshop on Charing Cross Road. I can't remember the name of it, but you'll probably know.
Swimmers?
I think it might have been Swimmers. But it had everything in there, and I would just sit in there all afternoon if I could and just look through the books. I couldn't afford to buy them, but I was just obsessed with all these documentary books, especially the British ones. And I remember when I started meeting stylists and collaborators at the Face, that they were all really into the American books. And I kept getting these other British books out and going, I like these pictures. And they were going, no, it's about like, the thing we're trying to get to, it's about, like runaway kids. And I was like, yeah, but they look like hippies to me. I want to do pictures of mods. So, or people that feel like mods, or, you know what I mean? So it's all about youth culture in a way, all of that stuff. I then took it to another level, like with the mosh stuff that I did later, which I can explain. So
just explain to people what the mosh project was.
So the mosh project was, the inspiration for that was a combination of pictures I'd done when I first started photography, black and white pictures when I went to visit gigs, and I looked down on the crowd. I was more interested in the crowd than I was in the band. And so I'd done some pictures of people like Peter and the Test Tube Babies, bands like that in that period. And I was just shooting the crowd, because I thought, wow, look at how they move. And then it was a different era in London or around the country in this period. It was kind of just coming up to rave, and all these gigs were happening, and I would go along to photograph these gigs, and the journalists that come with me would explain what was going on and how these kids loved doing this at this festival or that gig. And so I started watching how they were kind of enjoying the music, and they would literally climb on the stage and then roll off onto the crowd, and all the hands would catch them. And that had been similar to some of the dancing that I'd done as well in the past to punk music. And so I just decided that I wanted to try and emulate something like that in its purest form if I could. And thankfully the Face trusted me by this point to get on and do that. And that really meant a completely democratic casting process where you couldn't say, oh, I like that model because they're good looking or whatever. You just I just want to fill the room with anyone who wants to come. So basically I went to all the clubs where I'd seen these kids doing this stuff, and I fly posted the clubs. I went in and I gave these things out, and they said on them, free booze, come and dance on this day for the Face magazine. You have to wear our clothes, but you'll get free beer. And I must have photocopied a couple of hundred or more.
You must have
these
been mobbed
flyers. I don't know. I mean, a lot of kids didn't even know what the Face was, But anyway, I gave out these flyers in these clubs, and the dress of this venue was on this particular day. So we had a band who I'd photographed recently who were looking to get a bit of a mention. They provided the live music, and we had 2 big trestle tables full of clothes, but the kind of clothes that those kids would wear. And I was working with a kind of stylist who did not respect fashion at all. They were only interested in getting clothes to the kids.
Right.
Don't ask me how that works, but anyway, it's a long story. So there's piles of clothes, it's like a bloody jumble sale, and then these kids start to trickle in. And by the time we've got to about an hour of the doors opening, there's about 50 odd kids in there. And then we started serving them beer and said, help yourself, whatever clothes you want, put them on. And then I was sitting there with the stylist going, God, what if they don't dance? What if they don't dance? Anyway, thankfully, they did dance. And as soon as the drummer went, they just went, woof. And it was a big wave of colours and sweat and human bodies, and they were rolling on top of each other and just going berserk, and it was amazing. And I just shot for about 2 hours, and somewhere in there some of them took clothes off, put new clothes on, got rid of the sweat, came back again. Yeah, and I got these great pictures where all these kids were just going berserk. And a lot of people that looked at that magazine didn't even know that was a fashion shoot. I mean, to me, it was obvious because the clothes were very bright, and they were all really bright. There was nothing random about that. It was a look.
So this highly energized way of shooting people led to a very successful career as a fashion photographer. People couldn't get enough of you.
That's right. Yeah, I had a few years where I was just couldn't take the phone off. It was just ringing, and it was amazing. I got to see the world, and my parents got to see a couple of exhibitions abroad. So that was lovely for them, because they just couldn't even conceive what was happening, because they've been in such kind of poor outlook all their lives. To see their daughter on the world stage like that, it's amazing. Yeah.
And when did Northern Soul come into your life? Because we know that's been a huge part of what you've done.
So when I was really young, about 12, I went to a youth club in Bury, which was the town hall. you know, everyone was dancing to their usual stuff like disco and stuff I'd seen on Top of the Pops. And then I remember the DJ put on this echoey sort of soul-y sound that sounded a bit like Motown. I didn't recognise it. And the floor cleared of its usual suspects, and then out come these lads who were doing spins and dancing on their own and acrobatics, and then out came these girls who were all doing spins as well. And I said to my older cousin, who was a couple of years older, I was like, what is this? What's going on? And she went, oh, it's Northern Soul. And that was it. That was the moment I was sort of sucked in. And then when I discovered mod, so mod was another book thing for me as well, but I'll tell you about that in a minute. When I discovered mod, I realised that mod, the culture, wasn't just the Jam and Secret Affair and, you know, these new bands that had started up in the late 70s, early 80s. It was a thing from the 60s, and these kids from the 60s had been listening to nothing but black soul music and reggae music as well. So it all tied in lovely when I became a mod, because I got to dance to Northern Soul as well.
And is this when you did the photos that we've got on the exhibition here, or was that later?
No, that was much later. So throughout my sort of teens, from being about, 14 to about 19, I did a lot of soul nights with my friends. We'd either hitchhike or we'd go on our scooters, and we would go to all-nighters all around the country. Every Saturday night there'd be a different all-nighter on, and I got to know all the sounds, and we were exchanging tapes, we were following particular DJs because we knew they had like a one-off something or other. And so I'd got really into that. So that sort of all fitted in with the scooter and the mod thing. I stopped doing it for a little while, and then when I started working for The Face, the editor asked me to go and photograph a Northern Soul night in London. And that was it. I was drawn back in, and they were the pictures. So I did those pictures around that time. And it was good to do it because I had the access, you know. I had the music in my head. I knew the etiquette, you know. And so through doing those pictures, I was always thinking, I'd quite like to sort of deviate into like documentary filmmaking, as in, you know, making a film documentary. But I remember after a couple of years just getting frustrated with it and thinking, I can never find the moments on these dance floors anymore where I'd seen the thing that I'd seen at Bury Town Hall, which was just unstoppable energy. And so that's why when I decided I was going to try to make a feature film about Northern Soul. And
That's quite something. I mean, you might have done a few, I guess, TV commercials, but to suddenly think, I'm going to do a feature film when you hadn't done one before is quite a bold...
Yeah, I mean, it obviously wasn't formed quite as confidently as, yeah, it will happen. It was more, I'll try, but I've got to find a writer. And I remember speaking to my friend who's a TV producer, and him saying, what are you doing? You're not like an exec producer commissioning writers. You're the thing. You go in those all-nighters. You know what's going on. You can write that script. And I was like, can I? I can't even write. You know, I can't even read. Although I had met, like, you know, my husband by that point, who was an avid reader, and he used to chomp through novels very quickly. So I'd got into reading like classics, and I could read classic lit, which is something I never dreamed I could do when I was younger. I found out about a writer's boot camp that was based in LA, signed up to it, and the deal was that after 7 weeks you'd have a mini script. And so that was the script that I put through that system.
And that's the very script that, of course,
became that script,
became
maybe
the film.
20 drafts later, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And you had to get backing for the film, of course, because they're expensive things to make. How did you achieve that?
Yeah. Oh my God. Talk about jump through hoops and kind of push yourself to extremes. I mean, I probably spent more money trying to find money than money raised. But thankfully, you know, I had some kind of career. I had a property I could remortgage. You know, I cashed in mine and Marco's pension. It's just, if I think back about all the stupid things that I did, it's eye-watering. But, you know, I'm still here.
But I mean, the film has been very well regarded, you know, BAFTA-nominated.
Yeah.
And it's a fantastic achievement to have.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's something that'll never go away. Yeah.
And now here we are a few years on, and your photography come fashion career has gone from strength to strength, really.
Yeah. I mean, I did have a few years in the desert where, you know, I couldn't get work. I mean, we all go through that, don't we? I don't know whether I don't think you ever have, but you know a lot of photographers who've struggled. So I think, yeah, there's been like years where you're scratching around trying to get stuff. But I think once you have a style and that style has kind of become dated and then become trendy again, you're kind of always going to trickle the work through, aren't you? Do you think?
Yeah. I mean, I guess in my case, I just go and do it.
Yeah, but
Of course, I do commercial work
but
as
you're
well.
not. You didn't start out as a fashion photographer, so there's
No,
nothing
but-
going to date about your work, is there?
Mm-hmm. But as you know, ironically, I have become one.
Yeah, and a very good one.
Thank you.
A very celebrated one. Despite your kind of, what's the word?
Reluctance.
Yeah, reluctance, but also bemusement, yeah?
Yeah. No, I think you're right.
Yeah. It is an interesting career to have. And there have been some fantastic people on the way who've understood what I've tried to do. Because I've always tried to push things a little bit further.
But this exhibition we have on here and your, you know, Northern Soul documentary pictures have been very successful as well. Does it make you think I want to do more documentary work as well?
I don't know whether it does. No, because my heart is in trying to get another film off the ground. I literally use most of my spare time writing. But I think that everything I've done feeds into that. So it's almost like all of the disciplines that I've learned feed back into having a point of view about how to make a story. Do you get me? So it's not like any of it is kind of dead in me. It's all still there and alive. Like, for instance, I'm writing a script at the moment about a journalist who worked for The Face and then goes on to do other stuff. And I'm still passionate about it all, but I don't see myself as a sort of documentary photographer, or not anymore.
You've got the
either.
basic of this new script sorted, and are you trying to raise funds for this now?
Not yet, no. I'm not at that stage. I'm kind of polishing.
Polishing the narrative.
Yeah.
Because we all know that visuals are great, but you've got to have a strong narrative.
Yeah. And I think if the kernel of the idea is strong, then, and you stick to that discipline, then it will maintain its strength.
Well, we look forward to seeing the new film when it comes out.
Yeah.
We'll certainly be showing it here.
I hope so.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.